Statesmen Nation. We are sitting down with Mark Benavidez as we prepare for the 2023 football season. Coach, it's been a busy spring, a busy spring for you, obviously, busy preseason, all of that. Let's, before we get into 2023, let's recap, I guess, kind of how we've gotten here, what you were working on in the off season, and then we'll kind of recap, preseason ball and all that.
Yeah, for sure. So officially got here, I think it was January 2nd, January 3rd, and had taken the job in December. And so that whole short couple-week time frame, it was all about logistics of talking about transfers, evaluating current staff members, doing all those different things. Then when I got here, just absolutely hit the ground running. Very fortunate, was able to retain some guys that wanted to work, put a bunch of work in, and signed a number of very talented football players, got a number of transfers that came with me from my last institution, and that's been the main focus, is making sure we can do whatever we can to recruit, retain, develop the players we've got. All spring, we kind of pushed spring ball back a little bit compared to probably previous years where we didn't start until April, and we made sure we lived in the weight room and lifting 4 days a week and doing all these different things. And then when we're finally out there on the practice field, we decided to go ahead and practice at 6 o'clock in the morning outside Lacey, which April, 6 a.m., it was
a little chilly.
Yeah, we had to overcome some adversity, but at the same time, wanted to make sure that we set the tone for the players and for the season. Like, hey, we don't care. We got to play football regardless. And had in my eyes, very good spring where our guys were able to stay healthy. We were able to learn schemes in all three phases of the game, and kind of springboard us forward to where we're at now. And finished up with camp. Now classes are starting. Now there's a bunch more in our players' lives instead of just football. And so, we're really anxious for finally getting a chance to go play these games here in a couple days.
Right. Talk about preseason. Again, now you've got all those newcomers in with you, and how did everybody mix and all of that fun stuff, the chemistry?
Yeah. Again, we're fortunate to have some guys come with me in January, but from then until now in camp, it's been a great environment where guys are competing. I truly do believe kind of already changed somewhat of the mindset and expectations for our guys. We've pushed them. I know a number of guys have told me we've ran more this camp than they've ever ran before, so do what we can to try to get in shape. But team chemistry has been great. I think it was Coach Hafner been here for a number of years, and he did tremendous things here amongst the program. We have high goals looking at what they were able to accomplish here from 2007 to 2016.
Yep.
And obviously it wasn't quite as good as it probably could have been last few years. And so I definitely think there's some players that were hungry when we first got here to have change and to do some different things. And so what we've been able to do, I think the players have completely bought in and have wanted to have some of that extra work.
Yeah.
And then all camp, having a bunch of new recruits, freshman kids, our transfers from other different schools, people are excited for what we can do, and everybody's has that mindset that we can definitely change some things around here sooner than later.
Sure. All right, let's break down this roster. Let's start from, I guess, quarterback.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. So quarterback returned Sterling Ramsey, who played and started a good amount of games last year. We've brought in a few others that are still kind of trying to compete for that job, and that's going to be a spot that there will be multiple people play this season.
Yeah.
Throughout my career, I don't think I've had a single season where there's only been one quarterback start or one quarterback play. And so Sterling, he's done a tremendous job all spring, and then this fall, he's definitely picked up on what we're trying to ask from him, and so he's done a great job. The running back spot, number of returners, that was a group that last year was running back by committee. Having guys like Keegan Simmons, Dez, Chauncey, some guys that have proven themselves to an extent already on the field.
Yep.
They've learned, picked up the scheme. Definitely expecting a lot from that group. Fullback, tight ends, mid skills. That's a position that I haven't had the privilege to have quite as many or as much depth as what we have here. So, we've had guys like Alec Price, Sham, Marcus Price. We have a transfer, Justin Clatterbuck, came from Kansas Wesleyan, who was an all-conference fullback there. And that's a position that we want to be very, very versatile with and ask those guys at times to be a tight end, at times a fullback, at times a slot receiver, outside receiver, whatever. And that is a position that I'm very hands-on with, making sure those guys can be versatile. Then again, continuing offense, receiver. With this team traditionally being a triple option offense and maybe not quite having as much depth, I would say this is one of the better depth positions that we have on the team, and one of the better ones that I've had in my career, honestly. We've got a number of guys that I'd be confident to start.
Yeah.
And in years past, certain coaching staffs might say, oh, we've got 3 or 4. I mean, we've got about a dozen guys that I'd be confident they had to go in, that they would do their job, they'd execute.
Yeah.
Like any team, some guys might be better than others, but nonetheless, very good depth at that position. And then offensive line. I had 3 transfers come with me from my previous school. One of them was a grad transfer that was an All-American a couple years ago. Right. And on top of that, adding or still having multiple starters that were starters here. A guy like Logan Myers, who was a honorable mention all-conference offensive lineman last year. For us to win games and for us to score points, that unit has got to be the best unit.
Right.
And Coach Wareheim's done a good job developing those guys, and we're extremely excited to see what they can do and what they can produce.
Sure.
Then on the defensive side, at defensive line, lost a couple guys last year to graduation, as you're quite aware,
Yeah,
Big 99.
Yep, Big 99.
But we returned Kyrie Lewis, a guy I believe had 10.5 sacks, led our conference last year in sacks. Then we brought in a handful of other transfers and guys that we see potentially making a contribution to the team right now. And again, on the defensive side, we want to do whatever we can to get to the quarterback without having necessarily blitz a ton.
Right.
And having a guy like Kyrie who can be versatile, play different spots, and having some of the other transfers we potentially have, we're extremely excited for what they can do, what they can produce. The second level, Harlan Plummer, who arguably had the best stats on the team last year, didn't necessarily get all the recognition he probably should have deserved or probably should have gotten. He's been a great player for us all spring and this fall, and a guy we expect to have a huge year for us, what we're trying to do schematically. Brought in some other transfers, again, from my last school at that position where guys are still competing. Defensively, we want to be very multiple and be able to have it to where you can go from a 3-front, 4-front, and whatever at times, and those are definitely guys that are versatile that have picked up on the scheme. On the back end, defensive back was potentially one of the worst depth positions that the program had last year, and we added a tremendous amount of depth at that spot where there's a lot of competition.
Look at the roster. It felt like everybody was a D-back. I'm like, geez, that's all we have is defensive back.
Right. And that was a big focus from the jump was obviously there's different offensive schemes that we're going to compete against, but we can't have it where that's we're one guy away from not having a talented player at a corner spot or whatever it was. And so we actually returned both sides of the ball, most of the starters from a year ago. And they just simply added a bunch of depth at a lot of other spots, and some other guys are still competing. And there's a number of positions that it's not necessarily set in stone who the starter is. We'll find out here in a couple of days, where that's at. But that's been a big thing for us, is guys competing. I know it's been kind of uneasy for certain individuals that might have, quote unquote, had a spot set in stone, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. And for you to be successful and to win a bunch of games, got to make sure you're in a position where those players are competing and. They've got to execute. They have to get good practices. They've got to go to weights. They've got to go to class, and that's what we're working for right now.
Definitely. All right, let's break down the schedule a little bit. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but by design, you decided not to play last week. You're like, all right, we're going to go with 10. We're going to have a little bit longer preseason, work with these guys, make sure everybody knows what they're doing. So you open up this weekend, Saturday afternoon. It's going to be a warm one in St. Louis, but it'll be warm for both teams against Missouri Baptist. So let's break down the schedule and just however much you want to break down. And, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, so, we had a couple of chances to potentially play a week 0 game, but definitely thought what was best for us as a program, just kind of avoiding that and going right into our conference play. And for us, Missouri Baptist, it's going to be a challenge. They're a team that historically hasn't won a million games, a fairly new program. But you go look at their roster, they return almost every starter from a year ago. I think it was literally 10 on offense and 10 on defense possibly. And so, they're going to have a big benefit. Their head coach, I believe, has been there ever since the start of the program. Defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator have been there. Offensive coordinator is a fairly new guy, but, from a scheme standpoint, he was there in the spring. And so, it's going to be a challenge. We don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to do, don't necessarily know exactly what we're going to do, which is beneficial for us. But on the flip side, we've been with these players for 8 months. They've been with the players for years. Yeah. And so they've got that that advantage on us. And then, like you mentioned, a big concern for us is simply being St. Louis, humidity, 1 p.m. the humidity in St. Louis is different than Oskaloosa, Iowa, and making sure we're prepared for that. And ironically, this week it looks like it's really about very similar temperatures here in Oskaloosa compared to St. Louis, which might be good for us. But it's also going to be completely different when you're going against a different team. And we've scrimmaged another opponent earlier in the preseason, and how are these guys going to react to adversity when you're down by a touchdown? How are you going to respond? When you're actually going against another team and you're getting different looks, are you going to communicate those things on the sideline?
Sure.
Are you going to be able to overcome adversity? Those are all things that are going to be put to the test. It's my first year here. Don't know how certain people are when they're getting punched in the mouth. What are you going to do? And so, start with them, Missouri Baptist. Then after that, first home game against Missouri Valley College. Night game, something I've never had a home night game before. So it's going to be interesting for me. We're extremely excited for that to finally be in front of home fans. Again, the whole layout of the season, we've got a number of things we got to make sure that we could do to stay successful. But that game will be huge. I've had nothing but a welcoming environment and praise from a lot of people, and jokingly heard, I'm with you, winter tie, quite a bit, but nonetheless, just really anxious to see the crowd. I was at the Oskaloosa High School football game last Friday, and a great crowd, a lot of noise, and I know this community is hungry for success on the field, and so it'll be great to see them. After that, played a number of other South opponents where, our program had some success against last year, hoping to continue that success. Have our bye week, and then we get into those North opponents. And again, some teams that we had some success against have homecoming against Peru State. That was a game that was a very close game for William Penn a year ago. A lot of little mistakes led to some big mistakes, and eventually a loss. And I know Peru State, we know some of their coaches pretty well, and we're looking forward to that game. And then eventually finish up Grandview, obviously a big game. Coach Willie, they've set the bar high for our entire conference. So, we got to do whatever we can to try to get to that same level at some point in time. And then finishing up, I believe, Senior Day against Graceland, and a team that historically hasn't been the best recently, but Coach Ross has done a tremendous job at changing that program around. And last year, it was, I can't remember the exact score, but I know we had 8 turnovers on offense.
It wasn't good for William Penn.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best performance by any means. And so I know players that we have on the team that were there at that game, they're really hungry and anxious for that game as well, even though it's 11 weeks from now.
Right. Yeah.
So, our full season, at the end of the day, we got to take it one game at a time. And I'd be lying if I said we're exactly where we want to be. We've got a lot of work to do, and from a football program, things don't happen just overnight. We've got 24 starters, and we got to do whatever we can to make sure that those guys are staying healthy, doing what they got to do in the classroom, staying eligible, developing, staying in the weight room, and putting themselves and staying focused. 3-month season, it can wear on you.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Since you said 24, that made me think, oh, shoot, we forgot the special teams guys. So let's talk about kicker and punter and make sure that we talk about those guys as well.
So Cale Crawford, punter, and Ethan, our kicker, who's had a lot of success here. Both those guys returning. Both of them have a number of game experience. Ethan, he had a big-time game-winning kick against Mid-Am, 2 years ago, I think it was. And both those guys also great in the classroom. On top of that, long snapper, short snapper, that was a position that had a lot of uncertainty. The people that had done it in the past aren't returners. And so we had a couple guys that tried out, and they just did a phenomenal job. I mean, without really any coaching, they were just slinging it back there.
Figured it out, huh?
So, both those kickers and punters. We also have Mason Ford that'll do some punting potentially too.
Okay.
Another kid that just went out there and started punting the football. Like, holy crap, this guy, he can kick
an Oskaloosa kid. So,
right.
Indians fans, make sure you come out and see Mason. He might be
Right.
punting too.
Number 19. Yep.
Returners too. I guess I'm sure you guys have looks like a very talented team. A lot of athleticism out there. So I'm guessing there's probably a few guys that you could slot in there.
No, absolutely. So returners, you're going to still see some familiar faces. Armand Pledge, I know, has done it in the past. Trey Mosley done it in the past. Sure. On top of that, we've got a number of freshmen that have really good athleticism that look really good with the ball in their hands. A guy like Kingston Oliver, O'Darius King, potentially Julius Moore, who's going to get also some receiver, quarterback type reps too. those are some guys that have absolutely shown us as 18-year-old kids that they can get the job done.
Sure.
Have a handful of other transfers, and special teams in general is a spot where we will have a number of starters play all across the board. I know some programs will use it where okay, I'm just going to have backup guys do those things. That's not going to be the case for us. We'll have starting receivers, starting linebackers on kickoff,
Sure.
on kickoff return, and again, those are very vital parts of our success moving forward.
Yep. All right, let's put a bow on it. Let's talk about what's it going to take for the team to be successful, to reach the standards that you guys are hoping to reach this year.
Yeah. We use win quite a bit, WIN, what's important now. And a big part of that, too, is understanding what's important now long term, not just short term. But throughout the season, we got to make sure we're staying healthy. We got to make sure, again, we're staying focused. There's going to be at times adversity. Obviously, I'd love to go 10-0 and win every game 48-0. That's not going to happen. I mean, it's football. There's too much things that go there. But making sure our guys are staying focused. Again, where we're at, there's a lot of people that might not have been focused all year, and I've heard that from other coaches, heard that from other players. And that's something that obviously academics are more important, but at the same time, we got to make sure social life's not more important than what we've got going on in the field.
Right.
And so, that's very vital. Staying healthy. The best ability is availability.
Yep.
Doesn't matter how big, fast, strong you are. If you're not healthy, it doesn't really matter. And then making sure we're staying focused. And part of that staying focused too is understanding every game's important. We're not quote unquote playing conference games to start the season.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've got to make sure and understand every single week's important. And for us to put this program where we want it to be years from now, we got to make sure that we're taking care of business right now.
Definitely. All right. Once again, Coach Benavidez and the Statesmen will be in St. Louis on Saturday, 1 o'clock start against Missouri Baptist to start out the 2023 year. It's going to be an exciting year. We're hoping everybody stays healthy and they stay concentrated on the job at hand and all that. But then next Saturday against Missouri Valley, first home game of the year at 6 o'clock at Statesmen Community Stadium. So best of luck, Coach. Keep tabs on Coach and the team, statesmanathletics.com, all of our social media channels. Make sure you download the app as well. Best of luck, Coach.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.